You are listening to the Bravo Creative Podcast, hosted by Tom Baker. Thank you for listening. Your position has been triangulated. Drone Army has been dispatched to your location. Commencing attack run in 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the Bravo Creative Podcast, episode 6. I want to thank everyone for listening. I've had such a great response to the podcast, and I can't say thank you enough. I just want to put a little bug in my listeners' ears real quick. The purpose of this podcast is to bring this local tribe of creators together and to show you that with hard work and perseverance and a little bit of knowledge and getting some friends together, you can do. And I'm all about bringing this great group together and pulling new creatives into our warm and loving embrace. But putting this podcast together takes a lot of time. And I'm not asking for money from a sponsor, and I'm not asking for money from my audience. But what I am asking for is a click. The follow link that I'm going to provide in the description, I'd like for you to go out and follow the podcast. And let me give you the reason. It is purely just for my barometer of success or hitting the mark. If you like the podcast, show me some love by following. If you don't, unfollow. It's as simple as that. All right, now on to our very special guest today. Now, when I first met my guest, I was filming BTS, and that is behind the scenes for all of you non-knowers out there, on a little film here in around Springfield. You might have heard of it. It's called Vincent's Vow, and it was directed by the one, the only Ducon Williams. But my guest here today played a major part in the inspiration of that film and getting it going, and also starred in it. Anyways, while I was on set filming and in between takes, her and I would talk between takes, and she asked me if I would be interested in filming a short film that she had written and was also planning to direct and was planning to star in. And I said yes out of instinct. But later, once reality set in, I got a little scared and I got into my uncomfortable headspace and I started to get second thoughts. But my guest didn't. At least she didn't let it on. She believed in my ability. And even though I didn't, she continually gave me confidence because she had been down that filmmaking road before. And before you know it, we were in the thick of pre-production and doing some rewrites and storyboards and scouting locations, which was a ton of fun. And we need to talk about one of those instances. And then we were filming, and then we were editing, and then we were refilming, and then we were editing again, and then we were submitting to festivals, and then we were winning awards, and then we were all sitting and watching our little film on the big screen at the Moxie, and it was awesome. And I owe all of it to my guest's ability to take a chance on me, and I love her so much for it, and I'm so excited to be able to talk to her today, and I want to welcome to the microphone the talented, the beautiful, the hardworking, and the confidence-building Debbie Sutcliffe.
Wow, what an intro.
Debbie, how you doing?
I am great. Thanks for having me.
What have you been up to?
Right now, just trying to survive COVID and, wearing a mask. And
Yeah, it's changed a lot of our momentum. I think that a lot of us had, a year ago.
Yeah.
Actually, more than a year ago. But I remember there was a lot of momentum going into 2020. There were projects that were on that looked like they were getting ready to start rolling, and things were gonna, it was gonna get big. And then all of a sudden COVID hit and everything stopped.
Yeah.
And it was a little disheartening a little bit.
It was. Everything was going my way with the film. Everything we had planned out. We were getting ready like the week before the shutdown to head to a festival.
Oh, that's right.
That the film was in, that the festival had to shut down. And then we were, after that, getting ready to go to our biggest festival.
Yeah.
And that one was shut down. So
Yeah, that was Pushing Envelopes was the film, and that was kind of at the end of the festival run for it, correct? I think we had about 2 or 3 events that were, or festivals that the film was still need to hit. We had, there was a big one down in Branson.
That turned into just a internet type.
A virtual one. And then wasn't there one in Arkansas?
Our next one we were going to was in Kentucky.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And then our grand finale, if you will, was the International Christian Film Festival, and they ended up doing a virtual one months later, but that's how we had always planned to end the festival circuit. And we did get in that one, and it turned out well, but not quite as we planned.
Yeah. The International Christian Film Festival was kind of the coup de grace of that film that we did. Everything kind of led up to that. And I want to talk to you about the whole festival circuit later on, because we're gonna kind of go back. I want to go back and talk about pushing envelopes, as we progress, and how we went through all of those steps, because it was an interesting process for me, because it was the first time that I had really kind of gone through that exercise. You'd done it a few times before, is that correct?
This would have been my second time solo, but third time as an independent.
It's going through that, yes. Yeah. So before we get into too much of that, I'm curious, because how did you get into the acting or the filmmaking or all that? Walk us a little through that process, because I think it's kind of interesting how you, like, from my standpoint, I'd been doing theater for, 20 years, and this seemed like a natural progression for me to get into this, especially in this community of Springfield, with as thick as there is of people doing films all over the place, and how many different facets you have. It seemed like a natural progression. But for you, you work a regular 40-hour-a-week job, right?
Yep.
Do you want to share what that is that you do?
I process medical records for attorneys here in the Springfield area.
Okay. So you do a pretty, would you say that's not a very creative job?
It's a very repetitive job.
It's a repetitive job. So so then you got into acting. Tell us how that happened.
Well, it's something I always wanted to do, but maybe never had the nerve to do it. And my son was getting ready to graduate high school, and my husband and I were going to be empty nesters. And I always thought it looked cool to act in theater, whatever, but in school I just really never had the nerve to do it. I heard on the radio that there was an open casting call in the Forsyth, Missouri area for the film Winter's Bones. And they were just having an open casting call for extras. They were having an open casting call for extras. And I decided, I'm going to do that. That sounds cool. When does a big film like that come to this area? So I was somewhat overwhelmed. I showed up in Forsyth at the school, and it wasn't like any extra casting call I've been to since. There was thousands of people. The whole gym was filled up with people signing up to be extras. So I went through the process of that, and my son actually went with me. He had no desire to be in a film. I think he went to support mom.
Right.
So we went in there, waited through all these people. They give you a number. You get in front of the camera. Basically, you tell them your name, and they had you fill out a little questionnaire. So, and then, you just don't hear from them for quite a while. And then one day I was going to the post office, and I actually had just got over having the flu. So I hadn't been out of the house in a couple days, so I decided to go check the mail. And there was, at that time, my phone dinged, and there was an email from them to audition for the role of the mother in the film.
Oh, wow.
So keep in mind, I had never acted. I had never done a cold read. I went to the Branson Hilton there by the landing.
Now, wait a minute. Before you get into that, how did that make you feel because you'd never acted before or officially acted before, and then all of a sudden there's a major film coming in and you want to audition, or they want you to audition for the mom. So talk about the pressure that that had to be a lot of pressure.
Well, it was now I could handle it because I know what the process is. I know what's going to happen to me when I walk. I know what a cold read is. I know what all that is, and I know now that you're going to walk into a room and there's going to be 10 people at a table, casting table, staring at you. But that time I didn't, and everybody else that was there, they had already notified in advance, so they had the sides.
Oh, wow.
They had the sides, but I didn't. So it was a cold read for someone who had never done that before.
Now, here's the other problem that I see with that too, is that, so like if you or I now were to get a notice in the mail that said, hey, Debbie, we want you to come in and do a cold read. Mm-hmm. People now. Mm-hmm. But at that time,
I knew no one.
You didn't know anybody in the acting or filmmaking community because you'd never done it before. Mm-hmm. And so now all of a sudden you are a fish out of water at this point.
Mm-hmm. And I walk into the casting room and there is Deborah Granite. She is the director, and there at the table is producers. There's just this whole lineup of people, camera staring at you, and and I was trying my best to memorize the sides while I was out there before they called me in. And then they pulled the old improv, just throw some stuff out there. So I did my best to throw some stuff out there. But after seeing the film, obviously I did not get the part.
Right. Which
would have been cool. I would have been Jennifer Lawrence's mom in a film. But after reading the book, which the book was, wow, it was out there. But after seeing the film, the mother, I don't believe has any lines, or if she does, there's very few. So the sides they gave me in my improv was just way more talkative than that character was in the film.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. But I did get, they did call me back a couple weeks later to be an extra in a scene at the Rockaway Beach at a bar. And so that's where I say it all happened. That's where my love of being on a film set was. Even though I was just an extra, and you know how a scene is maybe 4 minutes in a film, but it's 3 hours worth of work to get that 3 minutes. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching the cameraman, and I'm watching the sound person, and I'm watching the wardrobe. I'm just watching all this stuff and thinking, this is fascinating. This is really cool. And they're having me, so we're getting ready to roll, and they're having me do this scene. I'm standing here, and then they have me go sit down at the bar. So I do my whole scene. I'm standing there. They roll action. I'm standing there, and then I go and sit by the bar, at the bar. And so I'm thinking, this is going to be so cool. I can't wait to see my scene. It's, because I'm in this film. So a year later, when they finally get it, edited and out and everything, you can't even tell it's me. The room is so smoky that,
right.
And I don't know, of course there was the disappointment. I'm like, oh man, because you wait a year and you want to see yourself in this film, but you can't even tell it's me. But for some reason I had this idea that me as the extra the camera wasn't going to be on the stars of the film. It was going to be on me, and I'm going to see myself. But anyways, it still was that behind the scenes action of just watching that crew and watching the stars of the film do their thing that just ignited something in me.
Well, and I would think so too, is that it seems so foreign to a lot of people. And then, like, right off the bat, you're auditioning for a major, not a major part, but a pretty prominent part in the film. And you're auditioning for that. And then that pressure and that stress and all that, now that's out of the way, right?
Yeah.
And now you're like, well, let me just go sit on set and let's see what happens. Yeah. I mean, in some ways, it could be a detriment to some people because you didn't do all of the hard work up until then. If you would have got the part, and then it would have been like, oh, this is easy.
Yeah, exactly.
When in actuality,
I can do this. Yeah.
it takes people like years and years and years to even get to something like
step.
that.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
but that's really a cool story because I think it kind of shows that experience, even for us now, because we act on films and even for us now, that is still a very exciting, it's a very comfortable place to be. In some cases, there's always stuff going on. It is fun as long as you're not the cameraman. Sometimes I think the camera, I can just speak from experiences that has a tendency to be a little stressful, or a director, I would think has that. That's where the stress comes in.
Yeah.
So you got into Winter's Bone and you went through that process. What was the next step after you got off that? Then all of a sudden, what did you do?
So on that set, there were a few actors from a Creative Actors Workshop, which was I don't believe they have a studio here now. I think they have one still in St. Louis, but not here. It's basically an acting class, and they're like, you should go check this out and just audit the class, see if you like it, because I'm talking to people behind the scenes at the set. And I did, and I took their class for around 3 years. So it wasn't just like, oh, I am now an actress and I'm going to appear in all these movies. I actually did some professional training. I still train. I still do master classes, read books. There's nothing like actually being on set.
But it's the next best thing.
It's the next best thing.
Yeah.
So
I've
especially with a year like 2020,
Sure.
when there's all your projects have closed down till hopefully next year, you still have to train just like any other muscle. You have to train and watch.
It's funny you say that because my wife and I were just I'm doing a show right now, which is we're doing the best little whorehouse in Texas, and I'm doing it up in Jefferson City, and of course, it's completely different doing a show now, because you have to, you're not on set, or you're not on stage, you're wearing a mask, or even rehearsals. You don't even see your castmates, until then. And I don't know what they're going to do with kissing scenes and stuff like that. Who knows? Might be getting some zinc to like boost my immune system and do before that. But the idea is, and this is how I've I've been doing community theater for 25 years. Acting classes and master classes and reading books minimizes the time that you have to do all that. I took the long road. I took the long, hard, fun road, whereas acting classes are the short, expensive, fun road. And I think that's kind of the difference that you're dealing with, especially on an acting, because you do have to exercise that muscle. I mean, I've sat out a year from doing a show, and you get back in and you're like, oh crap, I've got to go in and I've got to remember how to memorize lines, or I'm going to tap into those emotions again. And so it is really important, like what you're saying, is that you do have to keep going down that road. So if anybody out there that's listening, if you want to get into acting, the quickest and easiest way to get into acting is to pay for an acting class, or pay someone that does a lot of acting and let them take you through it. The cheaper way is to read a book. Like one of the first books I read was Stanislavski's The Actor Prepares, which is a great book, and it's a great kind of intro into acting. And a lot of actors, that's kind of how they got started, was by reading that or taking classes based off of Stanislavski's, concept or whatever. Yeah. So that's cool though. So you, as soon as you got out,
started taking classes.
You got your compass pointed in the direction of I'm going down that way.
Yes, and for a couple reasons. Number one, I had no training. So had I known how to do those cold reads, if the classes had
Right.
become before that audition, I would have done better. And secondly, I dealt with, it was something new. And like I said, I wanted to do something like this in school, but never really had the courage to do it. So the repetitive of classes builds your confidence. You can go in there, and not only does it train you how to cold read, and you're going through so many sides that you learn how to memorize quicker. Not only does it help with all of that, but also you become involved with these group of people that have the same passion that you do.
And they give you confidence as
And
well,
they
too.
give you confidence. And
Yeah.
to be honest, before this, I didn't even know people made movies around here.
Right.
I wasn't
I
connected
hear that from
with-
a lot of people, though.
Yeah.
You start to hear it less. You're like, oh, hey, I heard they were doing a film or whatever. But yeah, it is a little bit of a secret around here. We hope to change a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Because I think the more that it's not a secret, the more that's how we're going to be able to get funding on films that people go, hey, they're doing films around here. Let's go watch them.
Yeah.
I think that kind of helps in that process.
Yeah.
But that's good. I haven't had anybody come on yet that has gone that route. Like I had Mickey on, and Mickey didn't necessarily go that route. He went a different route than that. But it's a very direct approach. And how old were you when you started doing movies?
This was all like 10 years ago. So this 10 years ago, Springfield didn't know they made movies.
Right.
I didn't have this connection with the indie filmmakers around here. Didn't even know they made a film.
But not to tell anybody what Debbie's age is, because I know that's impolite, but
She's old.
Debbie had obviously had a son that was old enough to
Graduate high school.
and go there, and she started this. So it's never, ever, ever too late to start, and you will have a ton of fun. It is a great community, and you'll have a great time going out and learn. It is hard. There's a lot of hard work in it.
Yeah. Especially in the indie world. Now, if you're lucky enough, which I've been lucky enough to get in a couple SAG films that were filming in this area, but that's when we had tax incentives, Missouri.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So we could get the tax incentives back. We could get some bigger films in this area.
And other states are doing it, so I don't really know what the hang up is. I know there's probably some, there would be somebody that would come on and say, this is the reason why. That's great and all. But there is we have a very budding film community, not only in Springfield, but we have it in St. Louis and in Kansas City, and it would do wonders.
Yeah.
It would do wonders.
Because not only does Missouri have this beautiful landscape that you can't get anywhere else, Missouri is full of talent.
Oh, yeah.
Even in this Springfield, Branson area, just the talent in this area alone. If somebody could come, their budget would be way cheaper to film here. Our locations, people would love to have you here.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Here's my only reservation with it, and the counterpoint to it. My only reservation is it's like that Eagles song, The Last Resort. You call someplace paradise, you kiss it goodbye. And that's my only fear, is because, growing up in Missouri my whole life, it's been kind of cool that it's the best kept secret in some ways.
Yeah, I agree.
It doesn't get plastered all over the place, and people don't sit there and go, ooh and ah. But when they drive through the Ozarks, it doesn't take them long to figure out that it is a beautiful place down here.
Yeah.
And I think that's my only reservation with getting Hollywood to come in here.
Yeah.
And I think that in some ways you're making a deal with the devil by doing it that way. Not to say that Hollywood is the devil, but it's probably closer than some things. But I digress.
Yeah. So, but like Oklahoma, they obviously must have some really good tax incentives because they have some pretty good SAG films come in that area. And if some people making some great, clean, non-Hollywoody films
Sure.
come here.
Well, in Arkansas too, don't they?
Yes.
Didn't they kind of boost theirs up as well?
Yeah.
So you got into that, and you started doing acting classes, and then you started getting cast and stuff then, right?
My first film was a student film.
With
Evangel.
Mm-hmm.
And
They do one every year, don't they, typically?
Yeah. And I still love their films. A good thing about a student film is it actually gets completed. So you'll have...
It gets completed or you don't graduate, right?
You'll have some good scene for your reel or something. But that's a great place to start. But also during this 2020 COVID thing, MSU had a film that caught my eye that was on Facebook, that their first round of auditions, caught my eye because it was a female director, female writer. And I liked the title. So that caught my eye, and I'm like, it's a student film, but it's 2020, and there's no better exercise in auditioning than auditioning. It's part of the job. So their first round of auditions was a video audition, so I did that. And I got a call back. Their callback was an in-person audition, which would be my first in-person audition during COVID. So I'm like, I wonder how they're going to do that. So I walk in, mask on, and there's like 9 people spread out throughout the room. And the role I auditioned for initially, I only did because it was my age. There was a different character that I liked better, but she was a little bit younger. Well, they had upped the age of that character. So I'm like, hey, I know I auditioned for this one originally, but I really like this one better. Can I also audition for that? And I did, and that's the part I got. So I basically only did that just to keep myself sharp during a live audition.
That's awesome. And that's good advice for anybody, is you don't have much to lose when you go to an audition. Mm-hmm. You just have the part that you're probably not going to get because there's a million people out there doing it. So give it your gusto and try everything you can when you get in there.
Do the best you can, walk in there, do the best you can, walk out of the room, leave it on the table. You do the best you can, just keep walking.
It's always surprising to me, and it diverges a little bit, but I've always seen people that will go to an audition and they will underplay it, and they'll try to act cool, And the reality is you never get that part if you're acting cool. If you don't feel stupid auditioning, you're doing it wrong. That's always been my litmus test. And I learned that from my wife. She's like, if you feel like you're doing enough, you're probably not. Mm-hmm. So you need to get in there and do a little more. Yeah. And I think that's kind of that's the hard part about an audition that people don't realize, is that you're going to go up and stand up in front of a group of people and you're going to feel like an idiot. Mm-hmm. But if you can do that, and that's the confidence part that you got to get yourself to. If you can do that, you're going to do great.
Yeah. You got to walk in that room, and there's this table full of people, and they're just all staring at you. But now I've also been on the casting side, and I know that when you walk in there, they want you to do well.
Yes.
But it's
they want you to be the part.
Yes, they want you to be the part, but you get in your own head and your nerves or whatever, and you walk out of there and you second guess yourself, and don't do that. Just leave it on the table, walk out. And
stop that.
Yeah, stop that. And I have been guilty of that, but I've learned over the years. I did the best I can do, and this is what I look like. This is, because sometimes it is. You could be the best actor that should have got the part, but you don't look the part. You're too tall. You're too skinny. You're too overweight. You're too short. You're too. Sometimes
you can't fit that square peg into that round hole. It's just not going to work.
Sometimes it has nothing to do with your acting ability. It's they have a certain look in their mind, and you're not that person.
And sometimes I've auditioned for parts before, and I've even been told by the director a couple times, I'm not looking for someone like you in this part. Mm-hmm. And if you have prep time, just figure out a way, because you might, if it's a director that looks at things and knows that their vision is going to change throughout that process, go in there and do it the best of your ability and think through it. And you may change their mind.
Yeah.
So that even puts it into play is that go for that part sometimes. You know, now granted, I remember one time we were doing Wizard of Oz and they decided to open up and let all these people like audition for Dorothy, right? And there were like 50, and I'm not going to say girls auditioning for Dorothy. There were women that were in their 40s auditioning for Dorothy. And ever since that audition, I have hated Somewhere Over the Rainbow because we sat there and had to listen to it for like 50 times. And you can only go so old to play Dorothy.
Yeah. I was going to say, that's where to pay attention to that age range.
Yeah.
That they, you know,
It does make a
like
big difference.
If you're 50 and it says age range between 25 and 35, don't waste the people's time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true.
But then sometimes they'll list something, the age range is kind of
But they could write one
ridiculously-
line in there that could change everything together
Yeah.
and go, you know, we want that person in there.
Yeah. Sometimes they write an age range from 20 to 60. Okay.
Yeah.
What are you really looking for?
Yeah. Looking for a warm body is what we're looking for. So, you know, kind of to go back just a little bit, what would you say, because you obviously had an affinity for films before you got into a film. What would you say were your early inspirations then as far as film? You know, growing up, you know, going through life, what were some of those inspirations of films that you go, that's why, I mean, we want to do films because there's something that we saw along the way that inspired us to do a film. You know, I can do what that person's doing, or that seems like it's fun. Do you have any that kind of pop out at you?
Maybe not a movie, but a feeling. And a feeling, by way of feeling, I mean, you can be sad, depressed, whatever, and you walk into a movie theater and you watch a film, and all of a sudden it can make you laugh, it can make you happy. You can be sitting, you know, you're worried about your bills, your health, whatever, and you watch a film or a TV series, something that just makes you laugh. Or on the other hand, you can walk in there with your buddies and just be in the greatest mood, and a film can bring tears to your eyes. And next thing you know, you're trying not to cry in front of all your buddies because you want to look cool. But this film, I mean, not a lot of things have that much control.
So you are inspired by the impact of the medium.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes. I think a film has the chance to change the world. If you have, like I said, you can be on the edge of jumping over the cliff because it's a pile of bills and everything. And for that moment in time, those 2 hours, those 2.5 hours, whatever, you can escape from all that and watch this film that can make you laugh, maybe have a different perspective on your problem.
Yeah. I mean, it does. Well, and, you know, Pushing Envelopes, it's funny you say that because Pushing Envelopes was kind of one of those films for a lot of people that we heard from. And that was what was really cool. And it's cool to hear you say that because it does kind of tie into, it makes a lot of sense to me why you wrote it the way you wrote it. And kind of the way we filmed it was because it was more about how is that audience going to feel from this? It wasn't so much of going, oh, this would be fun. It was always trying to have that dance of where is the audience's emotion going to be at throughout it.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That's cool, Debbie. I don't look at it like that. I look at the visuals. I always like the visuals, but that's cool that you have kind of an ear on what the pulse of the film is.
Well, and that's because you were behind the camera. And so when you watch a film, you're watching how they filmed it.
Right.
And you're watching how they edit the film. Now I have to be honest, I've watched films, I'm like, they're not very good at portraying that character or whatever. I'm not believing it.
Right.
That's not very often. Usually I can just turn that all off and just watch the show for the entertainment that it's meant to be. But I know most creative people, whether you're an actor, behind camera, sound, whatever, you're listening for that little thing, you're always picking up in a movie instead of just relaxing and enjoying the story. You're watching it.
Except for, have you been watching Mandalorian?
No, I don't get that.
Oh my gosh. So I've hated Star Wars for a while. I just, of course I grew up, one of my favorite films of all time is The Empire Strikes Back. Which, have you ever seen that? Mm-hmm. So that's like one of my top films growing up. So I love the first three, or the middle three, as it were, because they made some afterwards that were the prequels, and then they made some ads. I've been fairly disappointed, for the last 35, 40 years of my life watching these. Mm-hmm. And there's a new series out on Disney Plus called The Mandalorian, which is it's all these minor characters of Star Wars, but they have built this story, and it's so much fun. And last night we watched the season 2 finale, and me and my wife were just laughing and excited about it because we're both kind of old school Star Wars fans, and it was just it was so much fun. The kids were like, "That's really cool." Yeah. And I'm not going to spoil anything because people maybe haven't seen it yet, but it was really, really neat.
Yeah. I see a lot on social media about that. As you know, I live out in the middle of nowhere, so our streaming,
the price you pay.
Our streaming abilities are not the best.
Well, it gave me a new hope last night on the Star Wars franchise because it's gotten so weird over the years. Yeah. But it gave me a new hope last night. It was so much fun. I enjoyed watching, which I don't do. I don't get that a lot. I have. I do. I kind of get a little snobbish with film and television now because I look at it and go, "Oh, that they screwed that up, or that edit sucks, or whatever."
Yeah. So you actually just got to watch something for pure entertainment.
And the kids enjoyed it, and it was fun watching it with them. And and this might be a little bit of a rant, but I think we've gotten away from it. I think everything has gotten too messagey over the time, and you're just like, we just want to have fun, and the escapism is good for us. It's therapeutic for us, and we don't necessarily have to have a lesson blasted over our head all the time. And
especially this year, we could just use some entertainment.
We could use some good old entertainment. Yeah. Like back in the day. Yeah. Like even like Charlie Chaplin. He really didn't have a message when he was doing his stuff, or Buster Keaton. Those guys were just trying to entertain. And I think that was awesome.
Yeah.
When you, in your creative process of acting, where are you going to, and what are you drawing on whenever you get a script and you go up there to audition? Take us through that process a little bit.
Okay, I look at as much information as I have. If I only have the sides for an audition, which is like, 3 pages of whatever, the scene of that character, I try to figure out what are their motivations? Why do they feel this way? What's going on before? What's going on after? So I try to look for clues of what's going on in the scene before, if it is available. What's going on after? Why do I feel this way? As after I get the script, then I like to backstory this character.
How extensive do you do backstory?
Not as, I know some people go clear to birth or whatever.
Right.
I take all the information I have about this character and why this character feels this way, and I'll fill in as much as the actual script will give me, and I go from there. So when I'm doing a scene, if I'm doing a scene with you and I'm mad at you, before I do this scene, while I'm in quiet time before they roll the cameras, I'm going over, I'm mad at you because of this.
You're somewhat methoding into that.
You made me feel like this.
Right.
Yeah. I want to be somewhat mad at you when I do it, when I go in there to do the scene, but I also know the value of getting out of character too. So
right. Which is hard to do sometimes.
Yeah. Like I'm not gonna go home and then be mad at Greg because I just did a scene and I'm mad at you.
Right.
So but yeah, I that's the way I like to do it. I like to prepare, do a backstory, why am I mad at you? And I care when they say roll, I'm really mad at you.
Yeah.
But then when they say cut, circle it, go on, whatever, then I get out of character. I'm not mad at you.
How important, in your opinion, how important is like lived experience for you? Do you use a lot of that lived experience, or do you like generate a scenario? You know, because like sometimes you look at, I see maybe a 20-year-old girl that's doing a role of loss and rejection, but maybe has never had any. So that's the benefit of being, like my age, 46, and being able to go up and do, because, I've dealt with some of these things that are good to show on film. So I can tap into some of that, but sometimes when you tap into that stuff, it may not be what you necessarily want to tap into. So exactly. Do you guard that, or do you draw from that?
It probably depends on the circumstances, but I will say I have drawn from it in the past. Like if I've done a character that maybe has been bullied or picked on or whatever, we've all been to school and people will be mean, and you can remember how that feels. So maybe the feeling of it, drawing from the feeling of how would I feel if this was really happening. I know how it would feel because it's really happened. So.
Yeah, I think sometimes actors feel like by going down that road of past issues or things that they had, I think sometimes they look at it as therapeutic by getting it out and letting everybody see it, but it still needs to be resolved,
Yeah.
And I think sometimes as an actor, it's still good to resolve those issues. It's not necessarily good to go, okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to sit down and meditate and relive some of the post-traumatic stress that I had when I was in the military. And then I'm going to share it out here with everybody on set.
Next thing you know, your heart's racing and they're calling the ambulance. Yeah.
Right.
And it depends on the scene. I mean, like some people are, if it wasn't a heavy scene, I'm happy to see you. Obviously, if the scene is I'm happy to see you, I don't need to go in a corner and, tell myself how happy I am to see you. I can just pull that one off. But for some of the deeper scenes or something, I want to actually be feeling that way. I just don't want to pretend like I'm feeling that way.
Well, I think if you draw from things, when you're drawing from it, you're understanding the complexity of it as well too, because it's not just about being mad.
Yeah.
I'm not just mad. I'm ashamed, or I'm mad to the point that you betrayed me. So then it becomes a lot more complex as to why and so I think it's good that you investigate and go down that road and build that story. Am I a little bit of a, is my character a nitpicker? And would that be, and so I think that's cool. I think you do have to build that backstory in order to find out, how angry you really are on a lot of things. And I think that's kind of that discovery of that.
Yeah. And it's not me, it's not Debbie Sutcliffe that's mad, it's my character. So, for instance, I've died in movies like 4 times now. Which upsets my mom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I didn't really die. Debbie Sutcliffe didn't die. This character died in a pretend movie. So keep her perspective of what's really happening also. So.
My mom's not going to like the next film I do. I'll just say that. When she sees it, she's probably not going to ever want to watch it again. Yeah. But hopefully that's because I did a really good job at it, right? That's
what my family's like, no, we really like the film. It's just that we didn't want to go down that road. And I'm like, well, I didn't go down the road. My character did. So if you really believed it and you got upset about it, then as an actor, I did a good job.
Yay, bravo.
Yeah.
Speaking of some of your films, are there any of them that are out there that can be viewed?
The ones that I produced?
The ones that you produced in or that you've been in, are those available out to watch on like YouTube or any platform?
I think I did a film called To Be a Soldier, and I believe that is still, you can purchase in stores. I bought it there at the Walmart area when it came out.
Oh, really?
I think it's still, yeah. And I did the usual picture, for social media, holding the film, pointing at it. Yeah, we all got to do that with the first one that hits the stores. Lost Child is usually on streaming. And that was filmed in Missouri. That was one of my bigger films. It was a SAG film, and one of my favorite films, one of my favorite sets to be on. And it's usually streaming somewhere. You can go to my IMDb page, and there on the right, they'll have which ones are streaming and where they're.
And we'll put some links out there if people want to watch those. Yeah, I think it's awesome.
My little independent short films are usually on my webpage, which I'll give you that link too. And so is Pushing Envelopes. Pushing Envelopes is now on 4 streaming channels.
Is it really?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Now keep in mind, you don't make any money with short films on
Sure.
streaming channels. Maybe you don't even with feature films. I don't know, because I've not done a feature film, but they're out there. The purpose of it was to get the story out there for people to
Sure.
see it. So
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, we need to share those out, and we'll go ahead and post those out. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
I also want to get, I don't know if we have it, but I want to get a poster. And I want to figure out a way where we can get everyone to sign it.
Oh, yeah, that'd be cool.
We need to get a couple of those.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have a day where we can all get together and get about a few of these posters together, and we all sign it, because I want to hang one up in my office.
I was going to say it looked nice in the office.
Yeah, it'd go really good, like right around here. Yeah.
Got your name on it.
I know. That's it. It is my first. That was that, and that's the only thing that I did. And after I did it, and it was like 2 or 3 weeks past, so I was buying some new camera gear, and the camera that I filmed it with, I sold it. I sold that camera. And I got done, and I typically, over the years, if there has been like certain things, like if I've taken a really great photo or I won a little award or something like that, I keep that camera, because I'm like, it's just kind of my memento. It's a very expensive memento, but it's a memento nonetheless. And I filmed Pushing Envelopes, didn't think about it. I filmed Mike Strain and Madison Strain's little film with that camera. And after I got done filming it, I went and sold that stupid camera, and I bought another one, and I was like, why did I sell that camera? And I should have kept it. And
should have, because you won awards.
I did. I won awards on that. I could have put the camera next to it. Yeah. Oh, well. Well, that's cool. And it's good to hear your process. It's fun. And I always think it's fun talking to actors of just like how they get down it. So let's jump out of acting just for a second here.
Okay.
And let's talk about, you did some films and you acted in them, and then all of a sudden you, for lack of a better word, you got really stupid and decided to write your own film, produce your own film, and go down that road.
Okay.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
Okay, just hopping back to the actor real quick. There are some that don't need to ever study. They're just natural, born great actors. So
Sure.
there's that too. But I just happen to, because of my lack of knowledge, went a different route.
I've said it before, and it's always resonated with me, was David Mamet, and I'll say it again. David Mamet, one of his quotes is that the problem with acting is realizing that it's not hard at all. You know, we act all the time. It's just being able to tap into it and, do it. It's just, I mean, you and I are acting right now to each other. I mean, we're not being who we typically are most times. It's just, there's always a facade of some sort. It's just trying to take it to the next level. Yeah. And some people are really good at that. Those people are scary.
Yeah. I always say that I like the actors that you can tell aren't acting. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you see some things and you're like, oh my gosh, I can tell they're acting.
Yeah.
But if I'm having a conversation with you and they come up and say something and they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, that's okay. We were just running our lines, but they couldn't tell we were really doing our
Yeah,
thing.
that's right.
Yeah,
That's
what
right.
it's
Sometimes you can, if you are, and I've run into that a couple of times too. You're like, wait, oh, they're really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just thought we were
Yeah. Just
chatting.
talking.
Yeah,
Just chatting.
Yeah. Okay, so how I got into filmmaking was I was doing a local film, and I won't throw the name out there, but you know how a lot of local films just they film or they almost finish filming and then that's that. They're shelved and nothing happens.
We've talked about that quite a few times on here. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was one of those instances. Spent almost every weekend. It was a weekend project of not my film, but a different. I was just acting in it. Spent several weekends during the summer on this film, and then it's a no budget film. I mean,
Right.
they didn't have zero budget. I mean, they didn't even. You're bringing your own water and.
That's the first sign
Yeah.
too, usually, right?
Well, and this was early on. This was way back. First one. If you're not learning from every experience, you're not. So, anyway, spent all this time, almost done, and it got shelved. And I was so disappointed, even though I didn't think it would turn out very well. Their equipment wasn't the greatest, and
You still wanted to see it.
I wanted to see it for just because all this time put into it. So I called up Maggie Jenny, which is an actress in the Carthage area, and I'm like, hey, she was also going to be in this film, and I'm like, hey, our film just got canned. Let's just make our own little short film. We have time. Let's do it. So I'm like, I had this idea rolling in my head with the story, and that's where all my stories start. They don't start on paper. They roll around in your head for, I don't know if that's this way for all writers.
That happens for me too.
Yeah, it's just in there, and you pull one of them out, and you keep building on it. So I'm like, I have this short film. We have no budget really, but let's just do it. Let's just do something, short film, get it done. And she was all on board for it. And we did it. We filmed it in 2 days, just a short film. And we actually completed it, which was amazing. I've learned so much from that, and so has she. Probably the hardest part with that was our location. Keep in mind, this was several years ago, but our editor was from another state, and it was filming 2 hours from my house. So there was so much more that I could have and would have done differently. The editor I would be sitting at work at my desk, and he would be sending files for us to review.
So you're constantly getting footage during the day to look at this stuff.
And I'm at work. I'm on somebody else's pay time.
Right.
And my job is not where you can just step away and watch some footage, not while they're paying you, you know.
Sure.
And so luckily Maggie had her children in school already, so she had free time. But it wasn't the best. Like, I couldn't get off work and then review the footage and, hey, I don't like this, let's do this again. Knowing what I know now, I would be like, hey, we're going to schedule some time, the two of us, and we're going to do this. And then we're going to schedule some time, and we're going to go location scouting. Just because, like I said, there was so much more I could have and would have done if things were.
You basically learned what every filmmaker learns. Every director of photography probably knows it inherently from mistakes that they got to, because a director of photography probably never got to where he's at without making those mistakes. It's kind of like, to even be someone that can film something, you have to go through the mistake of not enough pre-production and not knowing what the ultimate goal is on the post-production. And that is the biggest problem. I think that's where James Herron, okay, you know who James Herron is. James is great, and he's one of my loyal listeners. He's always the first one to like everything, and I love you, James.
Yeah.
Just letting you
Shout out to
know.
James.
But James came up with this term. We were sitting out talking one night, and he said, there's a lot of shade tree directors out there. And the best thing that I can attribute that to is a shade tree director doesn't necessarily at that point that they're called a shade tree director. They don't realize how much pre-production is involved, and they don't realize how much post-production is involved, because directing is kind of fun if you're directing in the middle of the, in production, but post-production and pre-production is kind of the slog of making a film in some ways.
Yeah. Well, I think we both learned valuable lessons on that. And like I said, there's so much more. Now I would know how to step back and say, no, let's do it this way so I can help you with this. She did a fabulous job, and I did review the final footage and change some things, but there's just so much I would have now, knowing what I know now years later, done differently.
Right.
And so would she. Now she's on to Maggie Rambles with other people. So it's kind of like a little show. Yeah. So look at that on Facebook.
We'll link that in the podcast notes.
So moving on to my film that I produced solo, like a year later, was South of Swan Creek, and it was a very enthusiastic production because we're dealing with horses. So, but I did.
And that's kind of near and dear to you.
Yes, I do love. I love horses. I love. And this one wasn't really a Western, but the horses were the main part of the story. But what I learned right off the bat is, even though I was solo production, I needed 2 sets of eyes. I didn't want to this is the Debbie show. I don't do just the Debbie show. So Brittany Greer was my director.
Brittany's coming on here in, I think it's 2 weeks. Yeah.
Shout out to Brittany.
And she's got a big project that's coming up too,
does.
which is kind of cool.
I tease her that I'm going to be dead body number 3 in that film.
I want to be dead body number 4 in that film.
So make it happen, Brittany.
Yeah, Brittany. I want to be dead body number 4. Debbie's going to be dead body number 3.
Yeah. So Brittany has been beside me for all of my solo productions. So she was director in South of Swan Creek, and we cleared time. I'm like, when are you available? We're going to go location scouting at these stables that my lead actress, Gina, she boarded a horse there. So that was my first lesson learned. Both of us, we're going to schedule a time. We're going to go location scouting. And then, also my camera person went also. And then back in the editing, we had Mark Parham. He was with the Mansion Theater in Branson.
Oh, okay.
He was our editor, and Brittany and I scheduled time to both go to the Mansion Theater in Branson to review the footage and give our critiques. Because when you're the writer, and Shannon Sharrow?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She was our line producer for that film.
Okay.
And
she did Nostalgia, which screened with us, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she was great. She taught me, something that she taught me was, first of all, Debbie, every set needs that person that's going to keep the ball rolling, and has to be a little tough love with the crew. Not mean, but keep the ball rolling.
Task oriented.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is definitely her.
No warm fuzzy on
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes. And also, so in reviewing the footage, we had this beautiful scene, horses rolling across, and she's like, it's too long. You as the writer, you love it. The camera person loves it because it's this beautiful setup. It's too long.
Yeah.
And I listened to her advice because she's right.
I call it shooting the puppy, is what I call it. It's that beautiful thing that you hate getting rid of, but you got to go out and shoot it.
Yeah.
It's like the old Yeller. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still, the scene is still in there, but it's a lot shorter.
Right.
It's so you need those other sets of eyes. And Brittany has been that other set of eyes for me. So that was my second film completed, did well at the film festivals. And it's also streaming on 2 or 3 different channels. Then we go on to Pushing Envelopes.
Now, before we get to Pushing Envelopes, though, you did learn quite a bit about the festival circuit doing
South of
Swan Creek.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're following along as a listener, there is a progression of hard knocks that Debbie is glossing over here. But there is a progression of hard knocks that was because it was your money involved in a lot of this stuff.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Correct.
So it was your money involved. It was you basically got to sign the check on the mistake on a lot of things. So and the only reason why I say that is because whenever I came on board for Pushing Envelopes, when we kind of started talking, we spent a lot of time in pre-production, a lot of time,
A lot of meetings.
and a lot of meetings. We had a lot of phone calls. I remember a couple of our phone calls were like 2 hours long, and where we would just sit and just go over ideas or thoughts or concepts, because there was some uncomfortableness on that initially, because there was some ideas and concepts that you didn't know if it was the right way to move the audience, which we can talk a little bit about that, because they did finally ultimately make it into the final film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was to me, that was the coolest part of the process. But we'll go back. One of the things that I want to kind of stress before we go into this is because a lot of the things that you implemented into Pushing Envelopes were because of the hard lessons that you had to go through. And there's no way to go through those hard lessons unless you do it.
Yep. Yep. And one of those is the value of a team.
Yes.
And a good team.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
That's right. It's just not a saying. Because, like I said, I leaned on Brittany and her, because like Shannon said, I have a vision of the beautiful horses running across the pasture. But like Shannon said, okay, we don't need a whole minute of the horses running across the pasture.
Yeah. 30 seconds.
Yeah. So, but all of those things you learn, and when you get the final product and you get feedback from film festivals, like you said, I was the bank on that one too. All my acting gigs paid for these film festivals and paid for the cast, crew, whatever.
Which is really good management.
Yeah.
I'll just say is if you're going to go and make money acting, keep it in a separate compartment and say, this is what I'm going to use to fund a film or fund a piece of equipment or, go to an acting class or things like that. There are ways to do it, especially if you have that 40-hour week job.
Yeah. Well, the 40-hour week job pays that other stack of bills. But that's why Debbie will not be making a 2021 film. There's a feature film in my brain, but Debbie didn't work in 2020 enough to pay for anything like that.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, you get feedback from these film festivals, and it's not cheap to enter film festivals, especially because I don't just want to enter a film festival and the film do good. I want to enter a film festival and my editor maybe get a nomination, and my camera, my actors. So a lot of those you pay for each different category.
Right.
Some of them you just pay for the film, and they do have extra categories, or they just have the film in general category.
So did you learn a lot of that on south of Swan Creek? You did?
I did. I learned, and I got feedback from a lot of them on, that's why I knew there was a certain style. I think our first meeting with you is like, look, I want the footage to look this way, a certain style. I didn't want the super clear, everybody indie film looking. I wanted a more
gritty,
theatrical, look to it. But it does. It costs a lot of money to enter as many film festivals as I entered. Now I start and I have a stopping point because there's thousands of film festivals. You could just keep entering and entering, but I have to have a starting and a stopping point.
Film festivals are kind of a double-edged sword in some ways, because you're paying for someone to reject you.
Yeah.
In some cases, you have no idea on a lot of these online film festivals, because they say they're going to screen it. They say that there's they say there's judges, viewing your films, but you don't really know a whole heck of a lot. So you are kind of flying blind on some of these film festivals.
Yeah.
Some of them are just, you're paying, $50 to get a set of laurels that you can slap on the front of your thing.
Where you could go to, if you really just want to, just
Right.
make your own.
Yeah, make your own film festival for $50 and then put your own laurel on there. I mean, you could. I think you were, especially with pushing envelopes, you were a lot selective with which ones you knew that pushing envelopes fit in. You didn't put it into a film festival that was like Action Fest, whatever. I mean, you put it in. Pushing Envelopes was a faith-based film, and
but it's not an in-your-face.
It's not an in-your-face, which that was one of the things early on when you were talking about it. We both agreed that that was what we kind of felt was the problem with a lot of faith-based films, was that it kind of beat you over the head with that idea. And ours kind of snuck up on you, and that was the idea, is that it kind of came off that way, which was fun.
Well, and a lot of festivals have told me that I love faith-based films. I'm in that genre as an actor, but a lot of film festivals have said, look, there's too many Hallmarky. Yeah. I know, girls, we love Hallmark, but there's too many of that feel of films. They need to be more something a guy would like, or something.
Right.
But
it's kind of the rope-a-dope. It kind of sneaks in, and they go, oh, I didn't see that coming. Yeah. Well, let's go back, because so you were doing Vincent's Vow, and you had already written the script at that point of Pushing Envelopes when you started Vincent's Vow?
Yes, the first draft of it.
Okay, so first draft was done, and then you and I met about, midway through shooting, I would say. So once we met, you had, how many versions had you gone through by the time we met?
Probably, I think the original maybe was 12 pages. It got knocked down to 9 pages.
Yeah. I think, so just to kind of go back on the story, I was actually filming behind the scenes stuff for Vincent's Vow. And I had Debbie was actually sitting on set, and I think you're just kind of watching me walk around with all this camera gear and filming stuff. And I was probably walking over to you and showing some of the shots and go, oh, this was cool or whatever. And then throughout that, Debbie goes, I'm doing a film and I wanted to know maybe, and so I think you called me like, it's probably about a week later or something like that.
I think I even shot you a link to some footage, not my footage, but just footage to say, hey, I like the look of this.
Yeah. And I think you basically just asked me if it was something that I could replicate or put out there. And it was
more of a theater giant film, not an indie look to it. Yeah.
And so anyways, then we started our pre-production and read through the script a few times. I think you talked about some of the ideas and the concepts of it. And then we changed a little bit. I think we changed because I think early on you liked the idea of it being a little bit more suspenseful at the front. And then I looked at it visually and thought, well, maybe we can do this. And then we kind of collaborated on not the overall story of the film, but we collaborated on a couple of early cue-ins to how we were going to set the audience up at the very beginning. So talk about that collaboration, because it's like you said earlier, sometimes a script writer or a director or something that's near and dear to your heart, we have a tendency to guard that really hard and not want to collaborate. And the obvious reason is we have an ego that goes, this is mine, But talk about that, because I've always been appreciative of the fact that you were very open to make it a sandbox and kind of figure out. It's always about putting a puzzle together, but it was kind of the way in which we did that, and that early on. And then we brought on Teresa Vincent Brown into it, and she even put in kind of her spin on some of those parts because she was the editor on it. And so she was looking at, so we had the editor looking at it. We had you, the writer, director, actor looking at it, and then the cinematographer or director of photography. So we had this very kind of well-rounded group of looking at it, because we had meetings like at all kinds
At
of
least, yeah.
yeah.
At
We
least.
sat there at Panera and talked
Yeah.
for I don't know how long
In the
about
library.
that. Yeah.
Well, all started with, like you said, the meeting you at Vincent's Vow, which shout out to Ducon. Love
Yay,
you.
Dukan.
And then we had meetings. I set up one of the meeting rooms at the library, and it just wasn't you and I. We had Teresa there, and we had Mickey was there.
Mickey came in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the key people on that, and Kong was our sound, but he's so cool. He's like, I'll be there.
Have you watched any of the Bobby Kong stuff?
Yes, it's hilarious.
I've like the other night I was laying in bed, my wife's laying next to me, and I got the iPad and I'm watching the Bobby Kongs, and I absolutely love them. I'm gonna post links in the description on this. Everybody has to go out and watch the Bobby Kongs. Those are so funny.
And what I like about him on set is because now he didn't need to go to any of our meetings. It's like, I know what I'm going to do when I get to set, and it could be you're worried because, like I told Ducon once, like you're hearing a helicopter and you're hearing sirens, you're cringing. He's like, I got it. Don't worry about it. He's just Mr. Cool.
He's
Yeah. Okay, so we had meetings, and how I first met Teresa, I put on auditions in Springfield that I needed more females on our team because I'm also equal female. Let's get some females on my crew here. And Gary McClure, he's a good friend I trust here in the Springfield area. He threw her name out there, and that's how I ended up with her. And
With Teresa.
Yeah, with Teresa. And Genova also, she messaged me and she's like, look, I love your stuff. If you need some help behind the scenes or whatever, just let me know. I mean, she reached out to me. And I'm like, great, you want to do this? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, the camera loves her. And she's such a great actress that I'm like, okay, I know you're already doing something. I hate to ask you one more, but do you mind being in front of the camera too? And she's like, sure. Yeah. So that's how those two became part of this. But so several meetings, like I learned from past South of Swan Creek and the first that to get more eyes on this assetted team. And you're the valuable people of this team. Everybody's valuable, but for this pre-production.
Right.
So meetings, we had the meetings with you guys. We had location scouting, made sure you guys were there. And there will never be another location scouting like this location scouting.
So the backup on this is, so we were looking for a place early on in the script. We were going to use a location that was along a highway. Mm-hmm. It was like a pivotal part of the film. And I think I probably more so than anyone else, I was a little uncomfortable with filming that because I saw some potential pitfalls because we only had 3 or 4 days of filming. And I saw it as a big, it was a lot of effort for a small amount of return is what I thought.
Yeah. And what he's talking about is there, for the people who live in this area, there is, between Springfield and Branson, there is a giant cross there on the road off 65 Highway. And with talking to the owner of that, he was all yes. And I, as the writer, I envisioned this in the film, oh, that would be wonderful. But then the value of a team is, here's why visually that might be wonderful, but here's why we maybe better go a different route.
Yeah, and it's so hard, and this is the other problem with an independent film too, is that you have a very small window that if you were to go and take 2 to 3 hours to drive out there and it didn't work,
or it's raining,
or let's decide that the Hells Angels decide to have a rally that day and drive down through there, you're hosed. And when you're on a micro budget film, although in the script it was in there, the reality of it is when you start getting into that resource side of your head and looking at what is available. And honestly, I think what we wound up with made it a little more personal, and it kept it close
Smaller,
and
yeah.
warm and all that good stuff, which is what you kind of wanted in that scene. And that was just by accident, but
Yeah,
it worked.
yeah,
It worked for
yeah.
us. But anyways, we had gone out and we had some location, and we were looking for a church now. And this is the long story. We were looking for a church, and so we had gone to a funeral home because there was a possibility we were going to film one of the scenes in the funeral home. And so Debbie and Teresa and myself, we all show up at this funeral home, and we're walking around, and the owner of the funeral home was super gracious, super nice guy, and he was taking us through the whole place. Well, we happened to be walking through one of the main, like what do you call it, sanctuary there, and there was a dead body in a casket, and we didn't notice it at first, and I don't think he thought much about it.
He's used to it, yeah.
But I have I'm a little squeamish around it, and I turned around and I looked over, and Debbie, I think you were standing there talking to him, weren't you?
Well, not the dead guy. But
No, you weren't talking to the dead guy, but you were talking to the owner.
Yes.
And I kind of looked back over there, and then you saw it, and we were both like, okay, there's a dead body in here. And then I think we all kind of agreed, okay, that's an omen.
Yeah,
Let's not
maybe
do this here.
Yeah. But he did let us pick any urn we wanted.
He did. He let us pick the urn that was used in the film, which that was super awesome. That
Yeah.
he just like, here, take this one.
Yeah, he's a super nice guy.
Yeah. So yeah, location scouting was fun, but then we wound up, and then we used Justin's house for how many scenes? How many different locations did we use Justin's house for?
I think 3.
We used the exterior back for Genova's scene.
The front for mine,
We used the front for yours.
and the kitchen for me.
And then we used
Bedroom
the bedroom for
for our rocker girl, Kayla.
Kayla.
Yeah.
And then we used David
yeah,
Barnett
Yeah, 4.
for
Yeah.
that. And then we used the front walkway out there, 5 for David walking out the front and
That's
going
true.
down the street.
Yeah, yeah.
David, I miss you, buddy.
Yeah.
I love you.
You know, speaking of David, he while we were filming Pushing Envelopes, we did a 5-minute short film.
Oh, that's right.
Audition 105, and I just threw it in a couple of film festivals, and actually won.
Is
award.
that's out there to watch though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on YouTube and it's on my
Yeah,
webpage.
I'll post that out.
Yeah. But anyways, he won an award, and he's all excited about it. And he's like, "See, you have to have me in every one of your films." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, you're in every one of my films. You're in my 3rd one now." So he's like, "No, you got to promise." So I made a promise. So if I ever even do a film, a picture of him or something,
David's got to be in it.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, David Barnett, great friend, great performer here in Springfield, was in the kind of local film community. And unfortunately, he passed away. What was that, in September? And so, David, love you. One day, my friend, one day.
Yeah. And you know the funny thing about that is I don't know. We're going to talk about cast, how we got the cast.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Okay. So I had in mind who I wanted to cast. I had some parts I just knew already. These were the parts. Like Genova was like, hey, she'd be perfect for that. But the others were just promises. Or, hey, you do the next film, yeah, you're in it. I've worked with all these people before. And I had this feeling that this is the group I needed to cast. I didn't have a casting call. I just knew who I wanted to cast. And I think there was a little out there of, well, if you're going to do a faith-based film, you should look at these actors, whatever. Like, no, I feel that, God's telling me these are my actors. And I thought, well, in my mind, if I never do another film, I've kept my promise. I've promised these people they would be in my film. That's a promise I made, that if I never do only God knows, but if I ever do another film, if I don't, at least I've kept my promise.
Yeah.
And
You'll do another film.
well, if I don't, and I thought it was me, but if I don't ever, at least I kept my promise to a certain actor that will never be in another one of my films. So,
Right.
Yeah. If you feel God's telling you to do something one way, but people are maybe telling you should do it a different way, always listen to God.
Always listen to God. That's words to live by.
Yeah. Had I listened to people, somebody else maybe would have been cast in David's part, and it was David's last role. So,
yeah, that's kind of one of those things that I think as a director, if you've gone through the mistakes and the errors down through the process, it is good to listen to your gut. I just know this is the way I need to do it. Mm-hmm. There's certain things that you can come in and you can give me advice on, but there's just certain things I just look at and go, no, you know what? I can see it. That part I can see. These other parts maybe not, and I'm willing to sacrifice on part of those, but there are certain things I'm not willing to budge on. Mm-hmm. And I think as long as you're willing to budge on things, things that you're not like 100% like, just like married to, I think it's easier to get through on, especially from a creative team oriented kind of way of looking at things. Like there were certain things that you knew that you wanted in the film. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of knew that this is the confines that we have to work around, and this is how we're going to make it work, And I've worked with people in the past on other projects that they're not willing to budge on anything.
it's definitely a give and take. On the producer side, a producer tries to make everybody on the set happy. This person needs this person needs this. You just try to make it work. And when you're like you with the camera, I'm like, hey, this is how I want this, but now how you get there,
Right.
what lens you use, and had I not given you that freedom, one of the most talked about scenes in the film at the festivals would have never happened. Because I didn't have the vision.
Oh, that was in the church,
one
right?
shot, yeah. Because I didn't have the vision. I'm like, I see that this has to happen, but it's up to you. You have the freedom, your creative mind, to get it there however you want. And you're like, I'd like to try this way. And that turned out to be one of the most talked about at the festival scenes in the film.
And you know what was weird about that is that, and I've always been like a big, huge fan of like that big, long, continuous take. But the problem that I had was, and this is another whole story in and of itself, but so going through everything and on the pushing envelope side, going through story, we got it all locked in. We got shot list and storyboard and all that stuff locked in. But there was one section that I just couldn't figure out. Even storyboard wise and even shot list, the day of, I just could not figure it out. And it literally locked me up so bad that I wished for a earthquake or a tornado to hit that day because I didn't want to show up on set because I knew I wasn't prepared. But anyways, that scene, basically what happened is we went through and we got through our shot list and we got through kind of everything that we knew we needed to get done at the church. And there was this part, and I wasn't seeing it, and I don't think Teresa was seeing it either, is how do we bridge these pieces together?
How do we get from here to here?
We just couldn't figure out how to get it to fit. For some reason, and it was, I want to say, it had to be at least 95% divine intervention. The good thing was I was in a church. The second
Debbie was praying.
Yeah, Debbie was praying, and we just had a good vibe going on.
Good team.
So basically what happened is it just kind of popped in my head. We decided to choreograph everybody entering into the church. And then what I did is I flew the camera through with a gimbal and tried to hit on these specific moments that were going on. And then we kind of slowly meandered to the back. One of the main characters comes in, and then we follow back into the church. And so it kind of gives this really good, it tells a story really quick of where we're at and what we're doing.
Yeah.
And it took 3 takes, and it took about 15 minutes to block everybody. But it fixed so many problems right there. And I was like, and I hadn't thought about it at all. It just, all of a sudden, it just popped into my head. And I was like, what do you think about doing this? And they were like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And it worked.
And that's where the teamwork comes in.
It does.
And let your creative people be creative and shoot their ideas out there.
But that starts early too, because if you didn't have that teamwork vibe going on, then an idea like that might come up, but they may go,
They're not going to say
I
it out
better
loud.
not say anything because they're just going to shoot it down.
Yeah.
And so it's very important early on in the process to make sure that teamwork vibe is going, because if you don't, it's going to shut down so many things down the road. And that was a big lesson that I learned while being on set and seeing that. And actually, I didn't see it then, but I saw it, and I've learned so much from it in retrospect of looking back on that that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we had
A bunch of meetings.
but
to
then
build that team.
Once we got into the actual film making, the production side, we had, was it 2 days or 3 days of filming?
2 days of filming and then another half day at your house.
Yeah.
maybe?
So, and this was
and we'll explain the half day at your house.
yeah,
thing.
but just so you know, we probably needed 3 days of filming, but we got locked in on some
Locations.
dates and locations, and we couldn't. And here's what we did. We had 27 shots in the film. I think we actually had about maybe 3 in the boneyard. So we shot just about every single thing that we used. We were super duper efficient. But that was in 2 days.
Yeah, 2 days, 9 pages of script in 2 days. But a lot of, I say 9 pages of script, but there's some scenes where it's visual, that something important is going on visually, but there's no lines.
It was 2 days of butt kicking.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work. And, and that was the one thing I told Mickey when he came in. That was that was the first time I'd met Mickey. And, Mickey helped my back out a lot because he was picking up gear and moving it here and moving it there. And that was a big help. Yeah. And that was where on the independent film sets, it's all hands on deck.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're a diva, you're probably not going to last long in that business on an independent film set, just because you're going to need to go run and get something, or you're going to be doing this, or you're going to be doing that, or helping with this person.
I can remember one of my first SAG film sets. I was in a scene, and they assign an assistant to you. So I'm like, oh, cool. I have my own person here. And basically the scene was I'm in a truck, and I meet up with a car. I'm on the road, and we stop and talk to each other. And in between, they wanted to move the camera or whatever, they wanted the assistant to come in and me get out of the truck, and the assistant back the truck up, and we roll again. I'm like, I can back the truck up? They're like, what? Okay. But they're used to these big time stars that, go sit in their trailer while I'm like, hey, no, I'll just slap it in reverse. I can do this. But they're, and, like they would be like, hey, so-and-so, can you hand me that? I just reached down just instinctively because I'm used to an independent film set, and I hand it to them. They're just looking at me like, oh my gosh, did the actor just...
How dare you pick that up?
Well, they were like shocked. They're like, I didn't know actors could do that kind of
thing. That's my job.
So definitely but on an independent film, you're many things.
Right. And it's...
But, we had a...
But that's what makes it fun, though, I think, in a lot of ways, is that it's going to be a hard butt kicker of a day. Yeah. But if you go through all the steps, you're going to have that completed film. And I think, again, a lot of it, too, and I'll attribute it to you, is having the editor in the mix and in the process early on is a big deal.
And she was also there with script in hand when we were filming. And
she pretty much played scripty on the film while we were doing it.
Yeah. And
DIT.
Like you would film something, and we would look at the footage, or we would look at the actor's performance, and Brittany or I would go circle it. And so Teresa knew what was at that time what looked like the best scenes anyways. And then...
Well, and like even on some scenes with me, like Brittany would play more first AD or director on a couple of scenes, but then on another scene, you'd be director because you were you were maybe not in the scene or not in that one, especially like in the church stuff where you weren't necessarily on camera the whole time, but you could actually see it and you could go, okay, that's good. But then there was some stuff that you were in that I was even having to go and call director on some stuff. So I think that was the cool thing about it is that you kind of, on an independent film set, you're gonna learn every single part of the process like Teresa probably didn't sign on to be a script supervisor and loading all the footage on there and going, which that was another whole story.
That was a whole story.
So
Brittany Greer was I'd say she's director also.
Right.
I'm tagged as the director, but I'm also the actor, and I know
she was watching the pulse of the film a lot.
When I'm on screen, she is the director, but even when I wasn't in front of the camera, she took care of all the technical side of everything while she just let me watch the actors. And so basically we were both director.
She was kind of...
And you were actually director too. There's scenes when you...
There was two, that I was like, I wasn't seeing and I think I remember going, we need to change this just a little bit. Because where I kind of brought in my hat was that I wasn't worried so much about the performance as I was worried about the filming and the edit. I was thinking about it more from Teresa's side, going, is that going to blend with that scene?
And you're seeing things a different way through that lens. You're seeing things, through the camera different than we're seeing. You're going to see what's going to work with something. And that's where the word team comes in, is because...
We can't stress it enough.
Yeah.
You really, really can't stress it enough. If you don't have millions of dollars, you got to have a team.
Yeah.
And you got to have a team of people that are passionate. It is so vital to getting stuff done.
And listening to people's ideas. For example, Teresa and I, going back to the editing, now, again, here's what I'd say is a long-distance editing, because I'm at work all day. She'd be working on the film, but she's also a very busy woman with the other clients.
Sure.
So she would shoot part of a scene to me and say, hey, then she'd be like, hey, review this when you have time, because she knows I'm at work and I can't just leave and go watch some footage. And she's like, I'm going to work on my other clients, just that, or run some errands or whatever, and then get back to me when you get up. So even though I never personally went to her house or her office.
Well, that is the beauty of the age we live in right now.
Yeah. Even though I never did that, she understood that, hey, I know I'm editing while you're sitting there at your desk at work.
Right.
But just review this and get back. So there was a lot of give and take there with my crazy schedule and her crazy schedule.
So, funny story. This was, I want to say it was like 3 days after we'd wrapped filming. It was like Monday or Tuesday after we were filming. And I'm sitting in the living room having coffee with the wife, and I get a text message from Teresa. And she's like, hey, I'm missing some footage. And I was like, oh, gosh. And so she goes, I looked through it. I cannot find these scenes at all. And it was a pretty pivotal part of one of these scenes. And I was like, oh, my gosh, And then all of a sudden, reality started to set in. And you go, man, if we have to refilm that, that is going to be the big major pain in the butt, right? Because I don't think we had access to the house anymore.
No.
Right? So anyways, and we had used my laptop to transfer footage on. Well, anyways, I think I called you.
You called me, and Teresa both called.
Right.
You guys both called me.
Teresa
and I'm
was
at work, and she's like, "You need to step away." So I'm like,
Teresa was scared to death because it was her job to put the footage onto the hard drive and pull it off of the SD card onto the hard drive. So she was taking full responsibility of it. She was very nervous, very scared. And so for whatever reason, I thought, I'm just going to look on my laptop on the desktop and just see. And so, I mean, everybody's scrambling. You guys are probably figuring out how we're going to figure this out
No,
or
it's
what we're
rolling.
going to do.
I'm like, I don't know how this is going to do again.
And I just happened to look on the desktop, and I guess I had some kind of funky background, but there was a folder that was kind of disguised down in the corner, and I looked in there. I was like, I found all the footage.
Yeah.
And she was, oh, great. Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
We're good. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But then we got, like you were saying, we started going through, and Teresa started piecing rough cuts together, and where we started seeing the pace of the film. And talk a little bit about that, what happened ultimately from what we had shot to the first version of the edit. Then we ran into a couple of roadblocks.
Okay, the things we reshot or
Yeah.
not reshot.
Yeah.
So we had our friend Justin. We were using his house, and we were running into. Poor guy had to go to work the next day, and it's running late, and so we had to basically decide which scene to do next, and let's cut a scene. So I made the decision, and it might have been a chickening out decision at the time. We'll discuss the scene in a minute. But I'm like, okay, well, if something has to be cut, let's cut this scene. And later on, that scene became.
That's right, because we had gotten the very end of the shoot that night, and it was
like he's like, how much longer, guys?
like, I need you guys to get out.
Yeah. So it turned out to be a scene that I decided. I was a little chicken on this scene. I had discussed this scene with you from the very beginning, and we had a few jokes about it. And we kept a joke after we had a meeting. But this scene, at the spur of the moment, we've got to decide something's got to be cut. We're running long. The poor guy needs to get to bed. He's got work. We're invading his home. So I'm like, look, let's cut this scene and let's do this scene. It's more important. And because it was with a dog, we had the dog
Right.
and everything. So we cut that scene, but later on, as she's piecing it together, that scene became something we really needed.
Yeah.
And a few other things one of the things, here's another thing about a good teamwork. We shot a scene at your house that was just some stuff we threw in. It was like me talking to Mickey. And Teresa shoots me a scene where I'm talking to that dog where she on her own said, hey, I had this idea and I threw this in here. What do you think? And I absolutely loved it. And I would have never thought of it. That's where a good team comes in.
Yeah.
I'm like, I never would have thought of this scene. I'm talking about the flashback scene. That was all Teresa. She threw that in there, and I'm like, oh my, I love it.
Well, and I remember, I don't know if you ever heard this story, but I do remember this, is that when Teresa initially got the first cut, I think she was a little worried. And so she called me and she said, hey, can you look over this, real quick? And I was like, yeah, totally. And I didn't see, obviously, and that's the problem with being an editor, is that you watch it so many times and you start to get a little too nitpicky about things you maybe don't need to be nitpicky about, and you kind of gloss over things that you probably shouldn't gloss over. It's weird how it happens sometimes. And I think because my background of editing and filming, she sent me a version of it. I think she was worried about sending it to you first. And so she sent it to me and she's like, what do you think? And I said, honestly, I think we're okay. I think I think at that point we decided we needed to add a couple of scenes into it. Or it wasn't that we had decided, but we had talked about it before that was going to happen. But I think when she sent that cut to me, I think it was an easy sell to you, the director, to go, yeah, we can do this. And it's simple and it's easy. And I think that's how that scene came back in, that we were like, yeah, let's not chicken out on that.
Yeah.
I think I think that's what ultimately we came down to, is let's not chicken out on it. It's going to make it. It's going to make the film kind of what we wanted it to be from the get-go.
Yeah.
It had that it was that initial vision that we had all talked about.
Yeah.
And it came down to it, and it was that one scene. Do you want to tell them what it was that was actually like what hung us up?
Yeah, and I worried about this. I worried about, I entered the film in many film festivals, some Christian film festivals, some not. Some in LA that are, not Christian film festivals. And Italy, that's not. To me, if you get a faith-based film in a film festival that is not, that is saying something, because they really don't like to watch those kind of movies.
Right.
So when they accept your film and it wins awards in a film festival in New York or whatever, if it's not geared to that genre of film, to me, that's a win, because somebody, and these are film festivals that actually have people.
You're reaching the people that you're wanting to reach.
Yes,
yeah.
This is when people could actually go to a film festival. So it had live audience, people watching these films because the film was nominated and the film won awards. And to me, that's the ultimate goal, is somebody watched your film. And not that I don't love getting it into a Christian film festival, but when you can get it to a non,
Definitely.
then
yeah, makes all the
that's
difference in the world. Yeah.
So there's this scene in the film that we talked about from day one in our first meeting, where my character is smoking a joint, marijuana,
A
cigarette?
J.
A J, to be cool.
Mary, the Mary Jane.
Cool,
yeah.
like you cool people call it. And I wrote it in there. I wanted it to happen, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought of, well, I want to end in these certain festivals. I'm like, oh, I don't want him to look down upon my character because of that or whatever. So I sort of chickened out a little, and then it was Tom. It's like, nope, you wanted this in there. You wanted this film to be real, to be edgy. This is real life that we're putting it in.
And I think it did. It, in a way, it made your character relatable to a wider audience.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was. It wasn't gratuitous in any way.
We weren't glorifying that.
It was motivated, and it did beg the question. So I think the heart and the feeling behind it was totally legit. It wasn't doing it for shock value. We were doing it because it added to the story, and it added to a couple of the other elements that we put into the story to put the viewer into a mindset. Because we knew that we were going to upend their mindset here later on. Yeah. Which, in essence, is the whole purpose of the film.
Yeah. So I wanted this scene. I wrote it originally in the scene. It was always in the scene till it was time to do the scene, and then I sort of chickened out. And when we needed it, after some editing, it's like, well, this would tie this all together, and we didn't do it.
Now that you say that, I do remember. I go, Debbie, this would fix all of it.
Yeah,
and you're like, let's do it.
And I kind of had this moment of chicking out just because of people's opinion.
Sure.
And what, and you know what, it turned out not one film festival even mentioned it. So,
right.
So,
yeah.
The two things that were mentioned the most at the film festivals was your scene that you shot that we were talking about earlier, and the question of, had I ever worked with Mickey Stone before, because we seemed so comfortable and natural on set together. And of course the answer is yes. Yeah,
the first scene that we shot, I don't know if you remember the first scene that we shot, the first shot of the day was, it was when he gets the phone call, because the sun was just right. It was coming through that kind of glassed window, and I was like, perfect light, let's do this one. Yeah. Which a lot of the film was done with natural light, which was, and so anyways, that scene was happening, and I'd only like met Mickey a couple times, but then whenever he did it, and he just nailed it on the first take, I was like, all right, he's pretty good.
Yeah, right. I guess what I've heard is true.
I guess he's all right.
Yeah. He is, I've said this before, so it won't be a shock to him or anything, but he is someone I just consider a true friend. Not as only is he a great actor, but he's got your back. He doesn't steal the show when you're acting with him. It's a partnership for whatever's best for the film. And there's just such an ease when you work with him.
He's a really good actor, because I'll tell you this, he's not as nice in real life as he is like on set. Like, he's got a dark side.
In every other film, but
Mickey's got a real dark side. I'm just kidding. I don't know that.
Yeah. in film he does.
Yeah.
But not this film.
He's been able to tap into it, that's for sure. And
you
Mickey
know,
did a great job.
Yeah, and to keep a secret for a year,
Oh, I know.
because there's some elements in this film that we wanted to keep secret, and for it to be kept secret for a year is a miracle in itself.
It is tough, and it's really tough in this environment. And I mean, I'm sitting on right now, which is a little weird. But since the podcast, I have had, I've become privy to information. Let's just say that. And you know of projects that are coming up because people go, hey, I'd kind of like to talk about this project coming up or whatever, but I don't want to tell anybody about it yet.
Yeah.
And it is tough because a lot of it's really exciting stuff, and you know that it'll get people jazzed and jacked up and ready to go out and start doing stuff, because I think a little bit of what fuels us, I think a lot of what fuels us around here is our ego, number one, but that's not a bad thing, because I think the way that ego fuels us is when we see our contemporaries out there doing and producing things and acting and having fun. And we know that we can do that too with just a little bit of elbow grease. It gets all of us going.
Yeah.
And it gets all of us going, hey, I'm going to work on that project.
Yeah.
I mean, would you say that pushing envelopes became a lot more doable for you after working on Vincent's Vow? Did that inspire you in any way?
Yes.
Because it did me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really did me.
Just because I'm talking about Ducon here. For a film for this area, he was top notch. I mean, his set was top notch. His wardrobe department was top notch. His catering, his lighting,
Production value in general was really well done.
Everything was professional. It wasn't just, I mean, he made sure to take care of his people.
Yeah.
And I mean, that took a lot. That took a lot of budget, and to be such a professional set. I mean, his set matched up with any SAG film set that I've been on.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
That was well, and that was, I just, I wrapped in October on that Land of Milk and Honey, and same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a way to do it, and it's not easy by any means. I don't think it's cheap.
Yeah.
But if you're going to invest money into something, that's kind of where you want to put a lot of it, because it really does. I've gotten to see some of the footage after the fact, not anything big and bad, but I've gotten to see some of the footage, and I mean, it makes a world of difference. It makes a world of difference to have those people, and having that crew. I mean, I can't tell you how important crew is.
Oh yeah.
And like
that's a lesson I learned from the first one.
you did, and that was something I wanted to touch on, because
professional camera, professional sound, professional editors,
it
professional
makes
actors.
so much difference.
Yeah.
And if you can't afford it, then go make friends with people that know how to do that stuff, because that's how you're going to get your project done. Is you may not have $1 million. Actually, you don't have $1 million probably. You're operating under $100,000. This is micro budget filmmaking here. But the plus side is there's a lot of people that love learning and love working on stuff. And that's not to say that we want to work for cheap forever, but we know that there's going to have to be a process that we're going to have to go through some of these hard knocks of making films for hopefully later on down the road when we can start making some money on films, and not necessarily making a living, but at least going, our time was appreciated.
Yeah. And it kind of depends on where the project is, because I've told people, hey, I can sleep in my own bed here, and you're local. That makes a difference. If I had to get on a plane and hotel, then yes, I want paid. But if you're a friend of mine and you're doing a passion project and you're right here in town, and they're like, well, I was in yours and you paid me. I don't care.
Right.
I'm dead body number 3, Brittany. I'm dead body number 3.
I'm dead body number 4, Brittany.
But you know what I mean? It depends on the location. And also,
Oh, and I can hold my breath for a really long time, Brittany, so you won't have to worry about me. I'm just saying.
and that's another thing we're going to talk about Brittany now. So South of Swan Creek was faith-based film too. And when I approached her, here's a lesson I learned about maybe thinking people wouldn't want to do something just because the type of film you're doing. I'm like, you know, it's kind of faith-based, and I know, like you'd like the horror films and special effects with blood and all that. She's like, yes, I'm in. Count me in. And, you know, pushing envelopes. Yes, and my mom's gonna love that I'm in this. You know,
right.
You know. So,
yeah, you never know.
Don't just think that you can't approach somebody because they only like a certain kind of film, because that's not necessarily true.
You know what? I think the best thing is to realize is that if you go into this film community, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, if you go into this film community with a chip on your shoulder, like you know everything, you're going to be sorely disappointed.
Yeah.
You really are. But if you go into this film community and the creative community just in general, and you give your fellow creative the benefit of the doubt, and you go in there with an openness, which is what you should, you're going to be surprised.
Yeah.
You're going to be surprised in what people will do. You know, if I were going back and if I was looking on my trajectory of life, I've done some pretty seedy shows in my life. I've done Glengarry Glen Ross, which I think holds the record for having the most F words in it, you know, and I did it with a vigor, right? And so I've done those type of shows. I am a huge fan of rated R films from the 80s, you know, and that's always been my kind of headspace. And if anybody would have come up to me along the way and said, Tom, the first film you're going to film is a faith-based film.
Yeah.
I'd have been like, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Ain't happening.
And I'm so glad that it was. I'm so glad that I can hang my hat on that film. And kind of in closing, Debbie, I just want, like I said, I really want to thank you so much, because it gave me a confidence that I think is so hard to tap into in this realm of things, this realm of creativity, and the realm of acting. And having confidence is like job number one. And whatever way you get it, you grab a hold of it and just embrace it, because it is valuable.
Yeah.
Because without it, you won't get anything done. You just won't. You won't have you're so fixated on the nerves that you don't even think about the craft or the art that's involved in it.
Yeah. And the team thing is important, and be kind and encourage your fellow filmmakers. I like Dukan, we're going back to him. I don't know, this was before the film hit the film festivals, but so I don't know if Mike Strain, somehow he got hold of Pushing Envelopes. He actually went to see South of Swan Creek at the Moxie, but then he's seen Pushing Envelopes. I was having a bad day at work, and he messaged me, hey, just watched your film. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, he didn't have to do that.
Right. I got the same thing too. I had people after the fact that were local film community people, and David Watson was one of them, you know, and David has been on here, and he filmed, he was the director of photography for Vincent's Vow. And I remember when he saw Pushing Envelopes, he was just like, God, it was so good, man. You did so good on that, you know? And that's the kind of stuff that it's hard enough, you know, it's hard enough doing that especially when when none of us get paid for it, for that to happen. The likes and the loves and the attaboys and the personal messages, that's what it's all about. It's about seeing how people are entertained. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to my initial message on here, is that if you like it, if you like the podcast, if you see other things that people are creating out there, it doesn't hurt. It just helps. There's no way around the fact that it does so much good to let people know that they're doing a good job on something.
Yeah. Don't be over competitive.
Yeah.
Compliment. Just because you're not in this project with them, maybe
Right.
you'll be in the next. Or
We've got enough obstacles in our way of getting that idea out of your head and creating it. There are enough obstacles that are already just intrinsic and in place to stop you. Why the hell do we do it to each other? And I've never understood that. I take that back. I was in that headspace before. I think all of us kind of have been. It's just a competitive nature of it, but it's realizing when we shouldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I was talking on my last podcast with my wife, but that was one of the things that DoCon changed my mind to, was the idea that we shouldn't sacrifice our friendship and our love that we have for one another for our art. We should be more accommodating of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's my rant. Sorry.
No, I like it. Yeah, it's true.
Well, Debbie, I have absolutely enjoyed talking with you. I'm going to have you back again because you thought we weren't going to fit.
I know. I was you're going to have to talk through the whole thing.
The other day, she was like, we're not going to be able to talk long enough. We've been talking for 2 hours, Debbie. I've got some cutting to do. It's been great having you on.
Thank you very much.
As soon as you start getting back into some of these new projects that you got going on, I want to have you back on because I want to talk about some of that stuff.
Okay.
Debbie, thank you so much for being here. It's been so much fun.
All right. Thank you, my friend.
You have been listening to the Bravo Creative Podcast. Analysis of your biometrics have been compiled and calculated. You are now a minuscule part of the collective. Enjoy the rest of your pitiful day.